Yeah, well, maybe we are blind idealists. I don't think so, because as I told you, I don't think we are that blind. I think we have an eye for what reality is. The fact of being idealist, I think we should maybe use another word. Normal political philosophy tends to be normative, not just descriptive, like political science, for instance, but normative. So to offer models, not just saying how the state works, for instance, but how it should work. So for instance, what a just society would be or should be. Now your question, do we have hope? I don't know. I mean, this is not the task of a philosopher to make this kind of prediction, like, yes, in 10 years we will implement a Rawlsian society. You can say. Very much depend on external conditions, though. But what a philosopher can do, again, is to open the discussion and to try to maintain, to keep it alive with his idea, her idea, with her normative models too. Take John Rawls. You know, it's look like the normative model he's offering seems to be unrealizable, not feasible. But on the other side, we are still discussing it, and this model gave so much impulse to the whole discussion on political philosophy in the last 40 years, because it's 40 years old, this book, Theory of Justice, the Theory of Justice, that you can't say that this is just pure idealism with no practical effect. I think it has practical effects. It is not by chance that, for instance, the whole debates on the fight against poverty on the level of World Bank, for instance, of the FMI, is influenced by philosophers who were either students with Rawls, like Thomas Pogge, or who developed Rawlsian ideals and Rawlsian arguments to better understand the problems that we face, for instance, on this particular issue. So I think that even when it seems that the theory is very normative, still may have a very strong practical effect. That's a very European question. I mean, this last almost, this weight of history on our shoulders. I would say so. You can't come out of history. You live in history. We all are inserted. This is very trivial too, but it is a point that Hegel made very clearly when he said that a philosopher, again, can only think his time or her time and not another time. In this sense, we are, yes, in history, but you have to see history not only in the sense that we are connected to the past. Of course we are. We are who we are through the past. As individuals, as a member of a group, and therefore also as a group, and so on and so on. But we are in history also in the sense of the present, of history, and of the future. This is something that normally people tend to forget when they talk about history, about the relevance of history for our life. Yes, of course, the past has a great relevance, but we shouldn't forget that history is not something that lies behind us. It lies also in front of us, and it is now. We are doing history at this moment. And so when you ask which is the paper of history for political philosophy, I would say it is quite a redundant question, because political philosophy has to do with history, but not only with the past, but also with the present and the future, giving an interpretation of the present in the hope or with the aim at changing something in the future, or at maintaining the status quo in the future. That depends very much how you see it. But of course, you have to have this historical consciousness, also trying to understand your world. You wouldn't understand the problems of your society if you don't have a sense for history, but you may not be a slave of history. For instance, if I think of the problem of poverty in Brazil, I have to think it in terms of Brazilian history, slavery, for instance, or the role of the kind of Catholicism that developed there, and so on and so forth. But on the other side, I won't solve the problem of poverty just pointing out at its roots in slavery and a certain kind of Catholicism. I have to think something different for the future and for the present. I have to give it another interpretation and see other external conditions, which are of course different. You don't have slavery any longer. You don't have, well, you still have Catholicism, but Catholicism had evolved from that time. But you have other conditions which keep these people poor, like for instance the unequal distribution of wealth and so on, which is connected more to a certain specific problem of the present. And the same is also, if you think of some of the problems that we face in Europe, which sometimes are not problem at all, but let's say for instance the question of migration. If you have an historical approach in the sense of this is our culture, we always had this culture, and these people are coming and they should adapt to our culture. This is in this case I would use the word wrong. This is a wrong way to see this question. This is not historical at all. It is just this way of thinking has nothing to do with thinking about our history. It has to do with a sort of glorification and idealization of history, because our history was also a history of migration and of mixing of cultures. So you can't use history to defend your culture, for instance, because this is absurd. Because if history shows us something, it is precisely that there is nothing like a culture which is unchangeable and defined once for all with clear limits, with clear borders. If history shows us something, it is that cultures are porous, that they're intermingled, and so on and so on. So if you really want to think of history and nation in the same word, probably you have to renounce to one of them. If you want to think of nation in the sense of a strong unity, you have to forget the history, because the history will show you that there is nothing like this kind of nation. If you want to think about history, you should renounce to nation, because history will tell you that exactly this idea of a united nation with a clear border, one culture, and so on, has never existed. Not even when you think about language, because the fact that, for instance, everyone in Poland now speak Polish is probably a recent fact. Exactly like in Italy, where most of the people till now speak dialects which have nothing to do with Italian. So